Hi, I'm Łukasz Górnicki, a product owner working in IaaS. I'm responsible for two documentation portals. One is the dev portal, IaaS.io, with a technical content, and the other one is Knowledge Hub, which is more business customer facing. This session is basically a simple tutorial which helps you to understand our IaaS open source tooling that we provided for a topic called Documentation Continuous Delivery. There are no slides behind this tutorial because basically what we're gonna do now is fully hands-on tasks, and the whole content that I'm gonna mention here is already available for you in our open source project, and I'm gonna basically go through these documents that you can access anytime you want, even now. So let us jump now first to the overview of the whole tutorial and the whole idea. So the first project that we open sourced for documentation topics is DocPad Skeleton API Doc, which is a simple documentation portal that is based on static site generator called DocPad, and it's out of the box configured with the other open source tool that we released called Chewy, which is supporting the distributed source publishing concept that is behind the proper continuous delivery process that you should follow. If you're going to follow this tutorial together with me and you're going to do all the steps on your own on your machine, you'll end up with a full setup of your local environment. You're going to be able to build documentation portal on your local machine. You're going to set up the whole distributed source publishing on your own, and you should understand how that works so you can add more topics in the future. And at the end, whatever you're going to have built locally, you're going to be able to push it to GitHub pages. The technology used for these open source projects is the following. So the content of documentation and then displaying it on production, it's all based on Git, GitHub and GitHub pages. There's also a DocPad static site generator, which is used under the hood for the DocPad Skeleton API doc that you're going to use. And there's a Chewy, which we also open sourced, which is supporting the distributed source publishing, and it's integrated with the documentation template by default. Let me now just quickly explain to you in details what these technologies are. So Git is basically a source control management system. You can use it for storing text files, which are not only the code of the software, but it can also be a documentation of the software. To work with Git, you can have a command line tool, the one that comes from Git, or also you can use some software like GitHub Desktop or SourceTree. In this tutorial, we're going to use only the command line, but I highly recommend to you also using the GitHub Desktop and SourceTree. Another one is GitHub, which is basically a hosting service for Git, where you can not only store your documentation files in repositories, but you can also manage your project through the GitHub UI. You can track your issues related to your documentation or your source code. You even can have a small wiki embedded in your project. The most known alternative to GitHub is a Bitbucket, which you can also use if you want. Then we have GitHub Pages. It's a service from GitHub, which is basically a free static sites hosting. It's highly integrated with the repositories, so it's really easy to use it. But if you don't want to use it, you can also use other alternatives, like for example GitLab Pages. Then we have DocPad, which is a static site generator. In the future, if you're interested with the topic, you can really use different alternatives like Jekyll or Sphinx. Later, if you're interested with the topic more, you can also take a look on all those samples and templates of documentation based with static site generators. Markdown. So the static site generators are mainly based on generating HTML out of the Markdown. Markdown is a simple markup language. If you use GitHub, then you probably already know what it is, because if you're editing sites inside GitHub UI, you can already use Markdown to bold the text, to make a list of elements, etc. etc. The known alternatives is the restructured text or ASCII doc. And then there's this Chewy, which is our, again, open source project, which you can use for free if you want. And it's supporting the management of distributed source publishing. Now it's time to see what are the prerequisites. If you want to go through the tutorial together with me, you have to have a specific software installed on your local machine. And not only. So first of all, we're going to work with GitHub. So if you don't have it yet, it's about time to get your GitHub account. Then you're going to need some Git client. Like I mentioned before, there are different Git clients like GitHub Desktop or SourceTree. But for this tutorial, I recommend that we're going to use a simple command line Git tool. What we also need is Node.js and NPM, because the template, the docpad itself, and the GUI, all of those are based on Node.js, so you basically need a platform to run the software. That's why you have to install Node, and the NPM, which is a package manager, which will help you to install the software. Okay, so enough talking. So you know the overview, you know what are the technologies behind the whole solution, you know what software you have to install the software and to use it locally. Now let us do some hands-on. Now I'm gonna go through all these steps that are displayed here in this document. I'm gonna configure everything on my own, on my separate, empty GitHub account. So whatever I'm gonna go through, it's gonna reflect your environment, and you should see the same on your side once you go through those steps. Now I'm logged into GitHub with my special account without any repositories. So it's basically a fresh account. This is how your account would look like once you sign up for the first time. Let me just access my profile so we can clearly see that there are no repositories in this repo. Now let's go back to the instructions. So first thing which I have to do is to fork a set of repositories which are needed for the whole setup. So the first one is the API doc skeleton, which we are actually accessing at the moment. We need to clone it because we need to have the template on our own, in our own repository. So let me just open it in another tab. The other thing that I need to fork is a sample REST API microservice. So it's basically a documentation topic with some sample documentation. So it's a real service which has to have some documentation. It's there. But later on, if you want to make some changes in documentation and you would like to see how it looks like in your portal, it's better if we fork that repository and work on it later. Let me open it in another tab as well. And the third project that we need to fork is a sample registry. So to manage the distributed source publishing, you need to have your content distributed in different repositories, and you need to have a kind of registry that lists all these documentation topics. So this is just a sample registry which includes an entry for Minerva service. So let me open it in another tab. So these are all the three topics you need to fork, and basically fork means like you're copying the projects into your account, and thanks to this fork link you can update your projects with changes that we've done to our original projects. So let me go to all of those three and click on fork. Another one, and the last one. And now in my project, on my account, once I refresh, I should see a 3 repositories, and as you can see they are here and they are forked from the originals. Okay, so we need to do now some further configuration. Let us go back to the tutorial instructions. We can perform the configuration using the git command line or GitHub UI, and I think that's the best way. It's just the simplest one, and you're going to focus only on configuration and not those all strange commands related to Git. So we first need to go to our forked docpath skeleton API docs, which is here. So when you were forking, you probably noticed that after the fork you got redirected to your fork. And then in this repository we need to change the Chewy config settings. So you know Chewy, like I said, Chewy is a module to support the documentation collection from different sources, and it obviously requires some configuration. And the configuration file in the template is added by default, but we just need to change one of the values there. We need to find path attribute, so let me copy it. And go to the fork. The Chewy config.js file is on the root. Let us open it and edit. That's the path attribute that we need to change. It's a path, it's a location of the registry that collects all the documentation topics. Let us replace it with what was in the instruction. The only thing that has to be changed is here. So here you obviously need to put the name of your account. In my case it's Lukasz Lab, and the rest is fine. So let's say make a change directly in the file, in the main branch of the repository. It's always a good practice to comment your changes, so later on you know what was changed and why. And let's commit those changes directly. And it's here, as you can see. The other configuration that you have to do is in the registry itself. You have to change the entry for Minerva service that is registered. So let's just copy what is here. Let's go to the registry, API, doc workshop doc registry. Let's enter the registry, open Minerva JSON. Here you can see the original location of the service. You need to change that. And obviously change the username. And make changes directly in the file with proper comment. So we have the initial configuration. Let us go back to the instructions. Now we have to start the skeleton locally. So to set up it locally, you have to clone the forked template to your local machine. And that's what we're going to do now. So let me go to the terminal, because like I said at the beginning, we're gonna do as much operations as possible using the git command line. So to clone it, you first of all have to find some location on your local disk. So now you can see my terminal. I'm on my Mac machine and I'm in my projects folder, because whenever I'm working on something, I keep all the repositories in one location because it's easier later to manage them. But in this case, let's first create some folder where I'm going to clone the project. And let me open it. Okay, and now let's clone the repo. Cloning is super easy. You just need to have a link to the repo you want to clone. So let me go back to the GitHub. That's my fork of the template. Let's go to the main page. And here, in this green button, I can get the link to the repo by just clicking that icon. Let's go back to the terminal and type git clone and paste the link. Simple as that. So now you have the repository cloned to your local machine. Now let us enter the clone. And now we're in the template, but it's an empty template. It doesn't contain content and it does not contain any dependencies. There's nothing installed there like Chewy or any other dependencies like Docpad as well. So we need to install them first. So let's type npm run prepare. This is a one-time operation. You don't have to do it again. You just set up everything once, you install dependencies once, and later you don't have to spend all the time on installations. So the installation is completed. Now we need to feed our template with data. So let us type npm. And what it is doing, it basically takes the registry. You remember that we have this registry that we copied, and there's a location provided of Nerva documentation. So that's what init is doing. It's getting the registry, taking the sources from a given location, injecting it into the template, and that's done. As you can see, this part is much faster than installation. It just took 20 seconds. So now we have a template with all the dependencies. We have template with data. Let us do the final step. Set it up locally. npm run start. So we're now basically locally starting a server that is going to host our documentation files locally. If you do it for the first time, it might happen that the operating system is going to ask you if you want to allow the connection, so yes, allow. And now you can see that there's a local host available. And let us just open the link in the browser. So as you can see, locally on your PC, you have a documentation portal with solutions and API docs section. So let us just access the API docs section. And all is here. We can also navigate to the release notes for documentation. And that's basically what you get. So you're getting a portal which you can fill in with a general data about your solution, more detailed API docs, and also release notes. So now let us go back to the instructions. So what we've completed for now is that we have all the setup in GitHub ready. We have also set up the environment on your local machine. So the only thing we're missing is a final publishing on GitHub pages. So we basically want to achieve that what you can see here locally is also going to be publicly available on GitHub pages. To set it up, we need to create a new repository on our account. So let's copy this and go back to GitHub to your project setup. Click on plus and add new repository and paste the name. And obviously, this has to be changed to your real username. It has to be exactly this name, so it has to be your username and it has to end up with github.io. It must be public and always initialize it using the UI with the README file because it's later going to be easy to use. So it's created. Now if you go back to your project overview, you can see that there's a new repository on the list. Now let's go back to instruction. We need now to perform a number of configuration changes to point to this new location of your generated sources. We're going to do the changes in your forked version of the template, and again, the easiest way to do it is going to be to do it with the GitHub UI. So we need to go to Docpad skeleton, to Chewy config again, and change two different attributes. SRC location, so location of the generated sources of your portal, and doc URL, so the final public URL of your documentation. Let's copy. And let's go to Docpad skeleton, Chewy config, edit mode, generation result, and it's here. Make sure you have commas, and obviously we need to change that value again. Put your username here, and also here, don't miss it. So you change it in the copied link in two locations. So that's one attribute. The other one is the URL. Let's copy it too. Go back to Chewy config, and in this case it's at the beginning. So let's just remove it and put yours. Comma is here. Just change the name. Okay. Changes are done. As usual, we do the commenting and changes directly. Again, go back to instructions. Now we have to make changes in a separate file, which is a Docpad Coffee file. It is a configuration file for the whole skeleton and its dependencies to Docpad itself. So let us copy this part, go back to the root of the project, as Docpad Coffee is there as well. Edit the file, and we're gonna have to do the changes at the very bottom in the environment settings. So change the URL, new one. We're committing the change, So we're halfway through. Now we have the configuration done. We can go back to our local machine, update our local skeleton with what we've changed in GitHub. So we're gonna have to pull the changes from remote, from the server, and we're gonna have to initialize the local template again with data. So let's kill the server because we still have the running portal locally. It's done with the keyboard shortcut Ctrl+C. And let's type git pull. So as you can see, the changes that we've done in the GitHub UI were picked up and cloned to the local repository. npm run init, feed the template again with data using the refreshed configuration. That's done even faster than last time. Now we have to generate documentation. You did it once already. You did it by typing npm run start. But it did not only generate the HTML and the whole portal, but also started the server. But when you're generating sources and you want to push them to your production, you don't want to start the server locally. So instead of running the server, you need to type a different command. And you can take it from the instructions. So let's go back to instructions. Step number 5. There are different ways of using it, if it's Linux or Windows. So let's copy it. So we indicated that we're running for production. So as you can see, we have HTML sources generated, no server started locally because we don't need it. So now go back to instructions. And we need to push whatever we've generated now and push it to production, to GitHub. And it's done. It took less than a minute. So what you just did, you took your local HTML files and you pushed them to the server, to production, to display them for the public. Now let's go back to instructions. Copy the link of your production portal. Open it, but of course, put your name here. And as you can see, your documentation portal is available publicly with your whole content through the public URL. So you basically ended up with ready local setup of documentation portal, with ready GitHub setup of everything you need for it to make it publicly available. And also you're able now to do any changes you want in the sample content. You can make those changes locally and push them to remote. And as you can see, we were able to establish the whole pipeline through your local machine, which basically means you can do exactly the same on some continuous integration server. So you don't have to run all those commands manually on your own, but you can have an automated job that is doing it for you. So for now, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it, you're interested with the topic, you like our open source contributions. Feel free to contribute, feel free to contact me, you see my details. I would really like to get your feedback on what we're working on. Thanks. Cheers.